Here we are in Graz, Austria, for the Diagonale, which is the Festival des Österreichischen Films.
Easy for you to say.
Festival of Austrian Films, not of Austrian cinema, and not Austrian Film Festival, it's the Festival of Austrian Films. It doesn't say how many there have been, but apparently it's been going since at least the 70s. So it's not one where they say this is the 48th or the 64th or whatever it is. That's not mentioned, this is just 2016. You've been here before.
I was here last year.
It's my first time in the beautiful and historic city of Graz, which is the capital of the Styria region and the famously the hometown of Arnold Schwarzenegger. There are no Arnold Schwarzenegger films in this program. Were there when you were here the last time?
That would have dramatically changed things somewhat, I think. I want to begin, if I may. We're getting some acoustic accompaniment from some kind of botched rehearsal.
Because we are in the Kunsthaus, which is the very strikingly modern blue bulbous alien type structure which is in the middle of the city.
It looks like we're in some sort of ocarina.
A mutant ocarina from Mars.
But I want to begin because you've just come out of the cinema seeing Agony, an Austrian film, of course.
Well, it's not, well, yes.
Premiered in Berlin, at the Berlinale.
It premiered in the Perspektive Deutsches Kino, so it's kind of really a German film. It's made in Austria. I think the director is Austrian, but he's studying at a film academy in Munich.
By a guy called David Diaz.
David Clay Diaz.
I saw this film yesterday. I didn't tell you deliberately what I thought of it because I knew you were going to see it today. I don't know what you thought of it because you come out of it half an hour ago. What did you think of it?
Well, I would much prefer if the film was not called Agony. To me, if I was in doubt about the film, that would push it towards being. If somebody says it's a good film or a bad film, I'd be, then they say it's called Agony, and so it's a bad film. I think titles are hugely important in cinema, and I think they're massively underappreciated. Because a good title can make a film, and a bad title can mar one. And this, calling Agony, why not call it like misery or gloom or depression? It's just sort of we get the gist of the characters in this film are having agony.
Maybe it's a good idea to actually describe.
Well, what it's about two young men in Vienna, one of whom is 24, who is studying to become a judge. The other one is, I think, maybe a little bit younger, who is a kind of, I don't know what he's doing, but he's able to drive a fancy car around. He's got a very souped-up sports car, and it alternates between the two of them, very much in the style of Ulrich Seidel's Import-Export, one of the most successful Austrian films, Österreichische films of recent years, which I think was in Cannes competition and won a prize. So in that one, we followed two people, and in the end, there is no actual explanation of why. I mean, I think I know why. I've never put this to Ulrich Seidel, but I think I know. And in this one, if there was a connection between the two of them, at the end, one of the characters, the mother says, it's mentioned as if they somehow have some connection. But
well, the opening premise of the film with on-screen text is that on 29th of November, I don't think it gives you the year.
No, it doesn't. So it's
29th of November.
Not a real event.
I think it is. 29th of November, a teenage girl is killed and cut up and dismembered and found in various dustbins across the city.
Dumpsters, as the Americanized title. They're not dumpsters, because dumpsters is what we call skips. But in refuse trash containers around Vienna. So
it begins with that intertitle or opening title, let's say, and then for the rest of the film, we're waiting for that to come to fruition. And so the dual nature of the narrative. You don't know which of the boys, presuming that one of them is going to commit it.
Yeah.
You don't know which one it is.
And one of them is a working class kid who's from
freshly out of the army, is he?
Freshly out of the army, so he can only be like 19.
Yeah.
And the other one is a sort of middle class kid who wants to be a judge. So.
And the first of them was kind of embarking upon training UFC milieu, as you said, fast cars,
and also
nightclubs.
Wants to be a rapper.
Yeah.
He's got a poster of Fast and the Furious 6 on his wall, so it ticks all the sort of stereotype cliched boxes. And I don't know whether the director is saying to the audience, you think the working class kid is the violent one, and maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I mean, I don't think we should actually say what happens at the end, because it is a bit of it would be a big spoiler for people who are going to watch the film, because the film does use suspense in, I think, a pretty cheap way, because it's like, as you say, it's a guessing game. Which one is going to wield the knife at the end? Maybe they'll both do it, and I was thinking, well, maybe he's the murderer and he's the lawyer or something like that. It's going to be some cheesy finale. and it's all the action is interspersed with this sort of black cut to black for about 5 seconds.
Well, as I tweeted last night, I would have called it umpteen fragments of a chronology of chance, or 50 Shades of Elephant.
50 Shades of Elephant,
referring to
S&M element. And there is S&M. There is a kind of violent sex element in the film, not a huge amount. So it's a well, he hasn't actually graduated. It's made at university as part of his course. I would be giving him a sort of a C grade on this. It would be kind of see me, can do better, must try harder. And it's kind of ironic that one of the triggers of violence in this film is somebody getting bad grades. So I don't know whether this is a warning to the.
I would be very discouraging of him furthering or entering a career in filmmaking.
Oh,
I give it a very rare 1 out of 10.
Oh dear. The last thing, I think the last film he gave it a 1 out of 10 was was Youth, which was the European Film Award winner. So he's in very good company.
Yeah, he is indeed. No, I don't want to predominantly. I don't want to use this kind of platform that we've kind of carved ourselves here to give spotlight to negative coverage of films, especially for festivals as well organised and welcoming as this one. But I do feel that this film it does two things wrong that fatal from top to bottom. It presumes that its audience is coming with prejudices intact, and it presumes secondly that they're stupid. And those are two presumptions that I can't stomach when I'm watching a film in any kind of art form. And I thought the film was deeply insulting in the worst possible way. Cheap, as you said, I agree. This kind of guessing game that it wants us to play.
Even if it hadn't been called Agony, you'd have still given it.
Umpteen fragments of a chronology of chance, I may have given it 2. But no, and I said, 50 Shades of Elephant, meaning that it's about an abhorrent, inexplicably violent, horrific incident, carried out by a teen, and it's trying to account for that, or play like some sort of psychological, anti-psychological kind of portrait of that, account for it. It even begins with like a shot of an upward tilt towards clouds, as if to say, is it just a change in weather that something as banal as that to account for something as horrific as this, and then you've got all these different nods towards media coverage, television.
There's only one news story in Austria at this time, which is that a girl has stabbed her mother after the mother had told her to stop being on the internet. Maybe the girl was researching 1 out of 10 on your grading scale. And every time anybody watches the television, it's always the same news story. And Austria, lots of stuff is happening, not just one story.
Bad parenting's another one.
And there's a bit where it says, experts are puzzled why this could have happened. What do you think, audience? So I take all that on board. I mean, I wasn't offended by it as much as you were.
It even dips into the closeted homosexuality of a teenage and a masculine, overly overbearing masculine society.
Who's the son of a cop.
Exactly. So it's for me. It's
so he should pursue other avenues in life. This David Clay Diaz.
It contributes nothing to our understanding of these kinds of things that do happen. So why make it? I don't like to pose that question as bluntly as that, but although I just have.
But it's a bit different if it's for a university course, effectively, which is what it is, because he hasn't graduated.
Yeah. So it's just what is it? An exercise? What I mean.
I don't want to be sort of sound as if I'm defending this film, which I would give a negative grade to. But on the other hand, how do painters learn to paint? In the old days, they would mimic the masters, and that was then you made your masterpiece, which was your graduation work, effectively. And this, it's like somebody showed him 3 Ulrich Seidel films and 3 Dardenne Brothers films, and said, copy this and put just 1% of your own personality into it. And he's been a good copyist.
I was looking for that 1%.
We're still looking for it, but let's emphasise the positive of this.
Let's go from one extreme to the other, because I have seen a very good film this week. My best film that I've already reviewed is Holz der Fleisch.
Which
your German's better than mine. Is that the right
Holz der Fleisch? Yeah, my German is a little bit better.
Literal translation of which is wood, earth, meat.
Wood, earth, meat. What? a comet?
But the English title that they've given it, that appears on subtitles, is 3 Farmers and a Son.
Is it like farmers, fathers? A little play on words there, do you think?
Maybe.
If so, they really need to go back to earth, meat, wood, or whatever.
Yeah, I think earth, meat, wood, earth, meat. is a better title.
With full stops.
But it's another feature-length debut by Sigmund Steiner, whose CV I looked at after watching the film, and he's been a cinematographer for Barbara Kaufman, fellow Austrian filmmaker, on shorts such as 23 Windows into a Courtyard, which is a very good structuralist short, 25 minutes that I watched after, as I say, discovering.
But it's very good that if you watch a film by this guy, you're then seeking out his other stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a kind of essayistic documentary, anthropological documentary, perhaps.
Social anthropological first-person essay.
In which he opens with the premise that he's the son of a farmer, although he is going to break the, intergenerational tradition of entering agricultural work because he is
a filmmaker. Or is he? Maybe he'll end up on the farm. But actually, the two films you could have put them in a double bill, because I thought it was a guessing game which one of these three is my dad. And because he does say something about, my father's a farmer, all kind of thing, and then you see these three, and there's one of them you see with a kid, with his 22-year-old or something like that. And I was thinking, you could watch this film in the same way. It's like there was this mini-series in the 80s called Lace, where it revolved around this Phoebe Cates tracked down three potential women who could be her mother, and the big line was, which one of you bitches is my mother? And then the follow-up was Lace 2, which was, which one of you three bastards is my father?
Three bastards
and a filmmaker. So again, one shouldn't think about these trivial things while watching the film, but it does have that slight sort of, you're just wondering whether the director's going, having seen these three men, which of them mirrors me? Because one of them is a very sort of philosophical philosopher of the woods. Another one is like a comic, chummy, chatty guy.
Whose son does appear.
Whose son does appear. And then the third one is the one who's at the first scene, the obligatory killing of the sheep, which has to be in every farm film. And
although this one's preceded with a weirdly intoned thank you.
He does thank the sheep before he cuts his neck, which actually puts the no country for old men bolting through its head. So I thought it was a solid film. I'm sure it'll play in other festivals.
Yeah, what I liked about it is that it manages to be very reflective in a personal sense without being indulgent. I think it's the right side of that. It's also three intimate portraits of these very separate, disparate farmers.
It moves between them.
Yeah.
So
it's not like a triptych in its structure, but it's triangular in its construct. Let's say. But it also happens to be or capture a harmonious landscape. It doesn't really give you any sense of precisely where these farms are in relation to one another.
Because they could be in three different parts of Austria.
Yeah, indeed. He's from Styria. Judenburg.
But you say this is the best film you've seen. You're obviously not including shorts, because one of the great things about Austrian cinema is the strength of the short films, particularly the experimental short films.
Absolutely.
So, and I think if you were looking at the whole festival and looking at every film that's in here, regardless of length, would you still have Three Farmers and a Son as your number one?
My number one new to me film, because I've rewatched a short this week by Sebastian Brammerhuber, which I've already blurbed for its distributor, six-pack film. In Over and Out is the title of the short. It's a reconstruction, let's say, of workers leaving the factory, but it's done outside of Frenois, the art school in France.
Northern France, yeah.
Which was a Belgian border. At a school at which he studied. And it captures this student's entrance with 12 different cameras that encompass the entire history of the moving image. So everything from
8mm, 16mm
cameras to the new cameras.
816, dodgy video, high def video.
Yeah, and an iPhone.
Yeah, and they're still in the catalogue. You don't get this in the film. They're all next to each other. So it has this strange 3D effect because
Well, it's weird watching it because it's one of those, and I think experimental shorts are at their best when they're prompting this kind of process, but you're wondering how the hell it was made. As you're enjoying it, you're also trying to figure it out, and it's not until this is the it's not. I've seen it before, obviously, but and it was great to watch it again on the little big screen to see. Okay, I know now how this was constructed, and I think it's a very clever response to, because that homage to the workers leaving the factory, the Lumiere film.
Every year there has to be a homage to the workers leaving the factory in experimental
Katerina
programs.
Gruzai and Siegfried Fruhauf, two Austrian filmmakers, just to name two, have done it in the last few years.
And who did Exit? Sharon Lockhart, which is in a much longer version of that. So every year, that's fair enough. It's good that we go back to the margins, to the origins. I mean, Brammerhuber, I was very surprised that he'd done this because I kind of know him. If he was here now, we'd be chatting. And he's previously done quite relatively conventional sort of documentaries. And when I heard that he'd done this very good experimental film, I was like, oh, well, let's check this out. I was a bit sceptical. And then when I saw it, I was like, yep, this is definitely one of the best experimental films of the year. And this is why Austria is very strong for this. Siegfried Fruhauf, Peter Czerkaski, there is a whole great Johann Löw, Lucas Marx. There is a whole huge Austrian tradition where avant-garde shorts are supported. But watching them in a program where you're watching 6 or 7 Austrian avant-garde shorts together can be a little bit much.
It's kind of inherently uneven, right? Because I think when they're good, there's no matching them, the Austrians at the moment, in terms of if we're going to refer to it as avant-garde, then
pushing the margins of cinema.
Yeah. In fact, this, I think, I may be wrong here, but this innovative program, Kino Innovative, of which there are 6 screenings,
5,
used to be called avant-garde. And they've ditched that name, I think, productively. But so when they're good, they're great.
But the problem with that is that, how much innovation can there be? And a lot of these are traditional avant-garde films, like Siegfried Fruhauf's film's Vintage Print. It's excellent, but it's not really innovative because that innovation was done 30 years ago. He's doing it in a very good way, and he's putting to some degree his own spin on things. But it's a very good Siegfried Fruhauf film. But it's not like Brammerhuber, who's really surprising me with the direction he's taken. The best film I've seen here, and the more I think about it, the more I like it, is a 3-minute film called Herbst by Meinhard Rauchensteiner, and I believe it's his first film. He co-directed a short previously. He is the advisor to the president of Austria, and he's personal assistant.
What, he's just made a film?
Yeah, he's just made a film, and he was described to me as the president's cultural advisor. So this is the wonder of Austria. And Herbst is a 3-minute film in which it's one shot of a doll, a stuffed animal, with a nose that lights up, and it's sitting with a tiny little book between its legs, which I think is the thing that makes it a masterpiece. And the director is off screen shouting at the puppet because the puppet is one of these that repeats what you say to it. You've seen the film, so...
Yeah, but I've seen the film, but I haven't seen a puppet like this before. So
I'm aware that such puppets exist. Nicky 35276, I think he's called. He should definitely have a...
But his nose only lights up when he's talking.
His nose only lights up when he's talking, and as a huge fan of the film Chappie, I'm always on the lookout for artificial intelligence in film. And this film is about as good as Chappie. And for those that know me and know what I've been like for the last year, to say something's as good as Chappie that's pretty high praise from me. Okay. And because in the film the director is off screen, you don't see him, and he's shouting Rilke's poem Herbst, Autumn, which is this delicate rumination on autumn, and the puppet is repeating what he's saying.
The funny thing is that he's not shouting it to begin with.
No, he's losing.
But
he kind of loses
sometimes he, because obviously it's a kind of an echo format, right? He says a line,
so you have to keep it short.
The puppet does, and sometimes the director says the next line a bit too fast, and obviously the puppet can't compute it, and it doesn't repeat it back. So it's just sitting there inanimate, obviously, but also voiceless. And then he repeats the line, shouting it. And actually, the funny thing is, in my memory, the puppet is saying what? I didn't quite catch that. Obviously it doesn't, because it can't. But it's like, what?
Yeah, you half expect the puppet to go, give me a break here, So, but I laughed. I was in tears of laughter. It's a 3-minute film. I can't remember any film, certainly for a short, that I've laughed as much at.
Well, I know that you like your shorts as well.
I like shorts, and it's just a great, simple idea.
It doesn't outstay.
I don't know what's avant-garde about it. I don't know what's innovative about it. It's just like a brilliant short film that anybody could watch, and it's one of those where, all right, if you think about it in terms of pedagogical stuff and how kids learn or some nonsense like that, there are deeper layers to it. And if you know that this bloke is the advisor to the president, that also adds a layer to it. But I don't think you need to know any of this or think about any of that.
Do you think there's like an allegory? Do you think the puppets?
I think it's a huge.
Interpreted as the president.
There's probably a huge in-joke going on here, which only Austrians will get. But I think it's a world premiere here, and I, as I say, the more I think about it, the more I think it's the best film I've seen so far this year.
Okay.
So and it's setting a high bar, because as I say, if you're already at Chappie level, you know, that's pretty high. So for me, without a shadow of a doubt, that is the best one. Herbst by Manfred Rauchensteiner.
Okay. What else have you seen?
We should have actually brought the puppet so we could actually.
I know. Well, as I said, I've never actually seen these things. I didn't know they existed.
We should go out into the streets of Graz and take it home for your girlfriend. I'm sure she'd have great fun with it. So yeah, that was a great discovery. I mean, with the innovative program, which is what I've been mainly watching, you know, it was very very up and down, and there were some that were pretty tedious.
What are your thoughts on these? That approximate their soundtrack with the image, like some kind of code, and they could go on for 3 hours. They could go on for 30 seconds.
Like Der längste Kuss by Hubert Silecki and Gerhard Rühm, which is,
you know, you get like strong synth drones always in transition, as are the waves on screen.
Yeah, I mean, those are the kinds of films that I can sort of appreciate, and that's experimental, and the next person will take that experiment and do something else with it. Like Brahmshuber, this technique, somebody else could take that and then do something even better with it. So those are the ones that I kind of dutifully watch, and it feels like you're at school a little bit.
Because I like them, and it's the kind of abstract image and also abstract sound that, you know, if you watch it long enough, you're not quite sure if the image is changing or if you're just projecting the change. I like it. I could watch it for a long time, although, as you say, it's like it's reached a kind of ceiling. Or, you know, when you watch them at international festivals, and it's the only Austrian short in a program of, you know, otherwise uneven, you know, documentaries, narrative shorts, those are the ones that stand out for me. When you get like 3 or 4 in succession, it's a bit like, okay. Twiddling Knobs is great if you're Brian Eno working on Bogus Man by Roxy Music, but like, at what point does it
just become twiddling of knobs? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the case, and obviously this is a national film festival, so everything is Austrian, and maybe on a sort of wider thing, Britain doesn't have a national film festival. Our beloved country, and like some countries have them and some countries don't. I'm not aware of a French national film festival. Germany, I think it's Hof. Poland has Gdynia. Slovenia has Porto Rož, as I think it's still there. National film festivals. Why should international people come to a national film festival? Are they a good idea, or should we be getting away from the idea of borders in the Europe of the 21st century?
It's strange, isn't it? Because these, this is one of 3 festivals in Austria that I attend, one of which is international, the Biennale, the other of which is European, crossing Europe in Linz, and third of which is this, a national film festival. All 3 are very, very well attended.
Very well organised.
Very well organised. This one, I mean, it's a good festival. I like to be here, but it's a strange dynamic to be part of. It's weird because last year I think I was maybe the only kind of international guest that was here. But
it's very much a gathering of the Austrian film industry, number one. Programmers are here, like Jean-Pierre Remzier from Film Marseille comes most years, and you know, he finds offbeat films that maybe haven't played in bigger festivals, so it's useful in that way. And I think also we should mention that they have 2 new heads of the festival this year, Peter Schönhuber and Sebastian Hogleitner, who are 29 and 27 or something like that, so you know, very much fresh new voices. And I think they have tried to expand it by having like films that aren't Austrian, so like Grand Central by Rebecca Grotowski, Surf Nazis Must Die, you know, some films that have a very tangential connection with Austria, and co-productions and things like that. So I think, I mean, you know, if it's a nationalistic film festival about how wonderful Austria is and patriotic films, that would obviously be very dodgy. But I think, you know, the festival does acknowledge the concept of nationhood, especially these days when Austria has just, you know, with Schengen built fences and you know, you've got to show your passport and all that kind of thing. This is the issue of Europe, maybe even the world at the moment. And like the concept of nationalism is dodgy. I think we can all agree on that. But the concept of a national cinema, if it's supported like Austria is, And if then that becomes a model that other countries can follow, like I was in Denmark, and I said the problem with Danish cinema is it's too much like Dutch cinema, it should be more like Austrian cinema. At which the head of the Danish film school laughed and she said, 2.5 directors and 8% audience share. So, you know, and the 2.5 directors were Michael Haneke, who's half a director apparently because he was living in France, Jessica Hausner, I mean, you know, Seidel, so that was it. So she'd obviously never heard of Tchaikovsky or, you know, Johann Löw and all that because they weren't commercial entities. So I think, in a way, people can come, if people want to come to this festival and see what is it that makes Austrian film good and special and different, and how is Austrian film supported by the state and by the region, and how a festival can then put that out. I think that justifies it. But I'm always just slightly wary of the idea of saying this is a. I mean, I'm always wary of the idea of nation. You know, to be honest, I think it's kind of an 1870s idea which we're kind of stuck with, and which, as we see now, is causing more issues than it's worth. But putting my idealism to one side, if the films are dealing with those issues, is that a fair balance? Yeah,
I mean, what I'm concerned by is, okay, on the one hand, it's not really concerned. On the one hand, you have a means by which to celebrate an industry that internationally may not have the support that, you know, British cinema or, you know, obviously American cinema does. So therefore, this is a very good concentration of annual talent, right? On the other hand, is there any room within that for critical discourse to, you know, surround that interact with it and intervene upon it?
Well, there's lots of there's lots of discussions here, but they're all in German.
Yeah.
And a lot of the films are shown without English subtitles. I mean, that's the nature of national film festivals. Like an international film festival, everything should have English subtitles. Not saying that as a jingoistic person, but in terms of the internationally understood language, it's sort of the standard that they have that. For a national film festival, some do and some don't. And you've got to go through the programme very carefully. But certainly all the discussions that I know of have all been in German.
What I will say is that I think some critics could really benefit, or academics even, could benefit from attending a festival like this, because there's a lot of female directors to be found within this programme. I'm going to refer here to a dreadful report from Rotterdam Film Festival that I read in Art Forum, in which the author complained that the avant-garde or experimental cinema is predominantly a man's game, and she singled out Tchaikovsky's Exquisite Corpus as an obviously, you know, technically brilliant film, but ultimately dubious. That's what she said, without elaborating on it, as if his gender alone makes his film suspect. Now that is the kind of bankrupt identity politics that I have no interest in.
I think the writer referred to it as a skin flick.
Skin flick, yeah.
Which,
you know, the utilisation of the word flick to refer to a film is in itself dubious.
Especially one as good as the Exquisite Corpus, which is, for me, one of the best.
Who knows? Anyway, so that is a reflection of international festival programming rather than the actual art scene, and I suspect that this author, who I previously never heard of, doesn't go to any other film festivals other than, you know, the big ones. And were she to come to a festival like this, she would see a certain brand of diversity that I think would give her, you know, a second opinion.
And the retrospective for Gabriele Kranzelbinder, I think I'm saying that right, and also the opening film on the first day, directed by a woman director, and it was International Women's Day, was March the 8th, which was the first day of the festival. So the two blokes who are running the festival, you know, I think have definitely have celebrated the fact that Austrian cinema does have not a perfect gender balance in any way, but certainly a better gender balance than most countries, certainly in Europe even, and definitely in the world. And crossing Europe, you know, is consistently half of the competition films are by female directors.
And in a very kind of unfussy way. It's not like, you know, they have 6 opening films, 5 of them are directed by at least one female. The trailer for the film festival, as is this film festival, the trailer is directed by at least one female. You know, questions of diversity, I don't know, I mean, like, entering dodgy ground because, you know, we're 2 white males here, but, you know, diversity, I'm beginning to be increasingly suspicious of it as a kind of hashtag self-celebratory term, it only ever really seems to be bandied around by middle class circles, and you know, there's nothing more middle class than the concept of an avant-garde, you know that. But at the same time, you know, it always kind of prompts for me whataboutism. You know, the brand of diversity that we have here in Graz is explicitly white, you know, gender balance or otherwise. And so it's like, okay, and where's the inclusion of, you know, a working class audience there?
Yeah, because you can look through a catalogue and you can see which are the female names. So you can immediately go, oh, not enough women here.
Yeah.
And if the catalogues always have little pictures of the director, so you say everybody's white. But how do you then find out what social economic background the directors are from? Mm-hmm. You know, do you have this director, parents were from the C2DE category,
yeah.
father bus driver, yeah. mother university lecturer? It's much, much harder to assess what classes film directors are coming from.
And that's where the critical engagement gets complicated and actually productive once you start to, you know, identify those as the key elements of, you know, an egalitarian setup. But
there are certain clues, like you look in and it'll always say, this director graduated from film school, that director graduated from university. Now, of course, you know, not just middle class people go to university these days, but if you've got somebody who is a self-taught filmmaker, like for instance Shane Meadows, British filmmaker, it is more likely that they're going to be from a poorer background. Let's put it in the simplest terms. But as I say, the number of times I look through the catalogue and like every new director that you read has studied this at film school, they've done this and they've done that and done the other, and they've come through this traditional route, and yet they are expected to make. They've come through the most conventional background, and are then expected to make non-conventional cinema. And there's a dichotomy there, but it does require tough questions to be asked. And as I say, it's like, okay, diversity, first of all, women, right, let's try to address that balance. It's like, you know,
then what?
And then what? But it's like kick racism out of football. And like, they've been kicking racism out of British football for 30 years. And yet, if you say, well, what about homophobia, what about sexism, what about the other problems? No, we've got to kick racism out of football. And you look at the football teams, you know, which are representative of the British racial mixture, and say, yeah, but not enough Asians are playing football, so we've got to sort that out. Say, well, what about the homophobic, you know, what about the fact that women aren't allowed to play at a certain level, or there are no female managers, you know, that kind of thing. No, kick racism out of football.
As I say, you know, that kind of whataboutism leads to dodgy territory, but my point is that it's easily prompted by what for me should be, you know, questioned. You know, those kinds of, it's great that they're taking place, these conversations, but they should be taking place in a very reflexive way, not in a self-congratulatory way. You know, we shouldn't have panels lamenting problems and then, like, you know, they become like a hashtag thing that is just very easily disseminated within that group. But these things, you know, can't be addressed overnight and can't be changed overnight.
So does that involve
they operate in much more complicated ways than, you know, quotas?
But does it involve like more of a reaching out to the actual city and the communities that are in the city? Because as I say, the audiences are very big, but it's not a kind of diverse audience. And you know, Graz is a pretty wealthy city, so to have this film festival here, and I think it has been in other cities before this, by its nature, you know, the audience is going to be a certain self-selecting kind of group in terms of class and
that's unavoidable, and that's, you know, there's nothing necessarily problematic, there's nothing necessarily wrong about that, but I think it's inherently problematic.
So does that mean you're not coming next year?
Oh no, I don't think that.
What would you like to see different next year, if anything, apart from more Schwarzenegger?
I just want to see good films, regardless of who makes them, to be honest. But I want to see the systemic structures and mechanisms for inclusion to kind of, you know, change.
And do you think festivals like this are an engine towards that process, or are they more of a bar to that change?
Can't it be a bit of both? Can't it be a kind of dialectical thing where, you know, on the one hand, as I say, they bring together, they condense and concentrate talent and art in a celebratory way, at the same time as kind of, you know, fencing it in somewhat.
What about the old, if you're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution?
I don't think the world operates in such simple dichotomies. but I'll come back next year, and you know, want to, and I think it's not. Well, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Uncertainty is the friend of art, of course.
Absolutely, and you know, ambivalence is the critic's, you know, greatest weapon. And you know, we should always edge forward, onward, with a certain skepticism, at the same time as, you know, celebrating what we can. And obviously, as we've already, you know, highlighted, this festival is obviously going in, you know, the right direction. But it's very difficult, you know, the way things are happening. I mean, this festival is kind of one island in an ocean of, you know, interrelation, and you know, how it operates and changes is in relation to others. It's mutually dependent.
And one last question: should Britain have a national film festival, and if so, where should it take place?
If it does take place, it should take place in the north. Perhaps in the National Media Museum of Britain.
Bradford. What a brilliant idea.
Which has just happily gutted itself and donated all of its goods, artistic goods, to London. Wasn't us, it was them, that kind of PR speak, which is rubbish. But should it take place, I think the last thing Britain and British culture needs is something with, you know, explicitly branded as a British thing.
And can you imagine what 5 programmes of British avant-garde shorts would be like? Maybe this film will be part of it. So on that note, we will wrap up and go off and enjoy the delights of Graz. And we're going to climb up that clock tower and castle now.